It is primary day in Florida, and of course, President Trump voted by mail, despite all that bilge about voting by mail as a gateway to fraud. We'll give you a preview of the races to watch. Ready or not, teens, here comes ChatGPT. It's for schoolwork, but the model's developers have added safeguards aimed at, learning, not just getting answers fast. We do not do a lot of true crime here, but the Lindsay Clancy murder trial is about much more. Over-medication, postpartum psychosis, a dysfunctional mental health care system. We will try to take a look at all of that. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Florida's primary today stands out because of the history it will make and, well, it's top to bottom weirdness, even by Florida standards. Congressman Byron Donalds is expected to become the first African-American Republican nominee for governor. Donalds will have a massive campaign finance advantage over expected Democratic nominee, former Republican Congressman David Jolly. And if Donalds prevails, he will become Florida's first African-American governor. That's the history part. Here's just a sliver of the weirdness. The primary for Donald's House seat, that's the 19th district, features 5 candidates who have previously run for Congress in another state. 2, Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina and Chris Collins of New York, actually served in Congress. Cawthorn flamed out after 1 term. Collins resigned after pleading guilty to insider trading, but served only 2 months of a 26-month federal sentence because President Trump pardoned him in his first term. More weirdness. In the 20th district, Democrat Debbie Wasserman Schultz is running in a district that has sent an African-American to Congress every election since 1992. Wasserman Schultz shifted her race to this district after her redrawn 23rd district became more heavily Republican. One of her opponents is former Congresswoman Sheila Sherfilis McCormick, who jumped back into the race, stay with me now, after resigning her seat in Congress in the face of a federal indictment for stealing federal relief funds and an ethics committee investigation that found 20 violations of House rules. Another candidate in that race is Luther Campbell, otherwise known, probably better known, as Uncle Luke from the highly influential, and that's putting it mildly, 1990s rap group 2 Live Crew. 2 other African-American candidates are in that primary, and Wasserman Schultz could win if, as expected, the black vote is divided 4 ways. In the 6th district in Florida, there is a nasty Republican primary between Congressman Randy Fine, who has embraced being called Islamophobic and even questioned coexistence with Muslims. He, nevertheless, is being attacked by Dan Bilzerian, a so-called manosphere influencer who in a recent ad depicted Fine as satanic, labeled him a fat Jew, and praised Adolf Hitler. That drew immediate condemnation from House Speaker Mike Johnson and Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. By comparison, the Democratic primary in the 25th district between Congressman Jared Moskowitz, a strong supporter of Israel, and Democratic Socialist Oliver Larkin, definitely not as supportive of Israel, well, it seems tame by comparison. For more on the entire Florida landscape and what to watch tonight, we are joined by CBS contributor Mark Caputo. Mark, I have a couple of scrawled notes here. 1, this marks the end of the DeSantis era, governor of Florida and political powerhouse there. I want you to address that. And also, I noted in one of your recent stories, the Republican registration advantage in Florida now is 1.5 million. In 2018, it was a Democratic advantage of 245,000. What a titanic shift.
The demographics is destiny in Florida, and Florida, by its nature, in part because it's sort of the Republican Party that Jeb Bush built, the former governor, naturally imports Republican supervoters. And over time, we're seeing what they call the big sort in American politics. Right. And Florida went red, and then it went MAGA red. So it is the capital of MAGAville. But DeSantis was one of the sort of the crown princes of MAGAville under the King Trump. But he committed the sin of disloyalty by deciding to run against President Trump. And that sort of sealed his fate. DeSantis really rose to power and prominence by being the guy who pushed back on the health establishment and the sort of COVID shut-in rules, for lack of a better term.
Right.
And after that play was done, he never really sort of evolved out of that. He was sort of the high school jock who, after he graduated, kept talking about
the glory days,
what a great hitter he was. And
right.
DeSantis, as one person told me, well, it was Matt Gaetz at the time when he was a congressman, they served with him, he had said that I'm DeSantis' friend in Congress. And I say friend because he doesn't have any other friends. He doesn't make friends. He collects sort of opponents, runs through staff, not very popular.
How has redistricting changed primary day this day?
It's changed it in that, as your intro had pointed out, you have the shifting around, Moskowitz going to a new district, Debbie Wasserman Schultz going to a completely new district, Darren Soto, congressman from the Orlando area, probably drawn out of his seat. Right now, the Republicans have an advantage of 20-8 in this congressional delegation. If the lines hold, they think they could go from a 20-8 advantage to a 24-4 advantage. Yeah.
What about
and
Corey
that's a
Mills?
big thing.
What about Republican Corey Mills? Lots of charges.
I don't know if we're allowed to curse on the show, but
go right ahead.
A top Republican who had looked at the race said he's in real deep shit because Mills has been accused of being violent with one girlfriend and abusing another, allegedly. Threatened to release pornographic material of her and nudes of her, had a restraining order slapped against him as a result, under investigation for campaign finance irregularities or alleged ones, accused of stolen valor by allegedly inflating his record as a service member, just on and on and on and on. There is a former TV host from the Fox affiliate there named Ryan Elijah. The insiders say and they hope that Ryan Elijah will knock off Corey Mills, because if not, this is, by the way, DeSantis' old district.
It might be in play, in other words.
It might be in play. I don't want to say too much, but it might be.
So when DeSantis won for re-election, won by 18 points, there were a lot of articles written about the death of the Democratic Party statewide in Florida. Is that still true? Is there any resurgence?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's going to be any resurgence in that. You might see the margins decrease slightly, the Republican margins in the Florida House and in the Florida Senate. You might see some Democrats like Moskowitz. If a Democrat's going to win in that redrawn seat, it's going to be Moskowitz. But by and large, the Democratic Party needs a good 15 to 20-year rebuilding plan, and they're slowly recreaking back into that sort of relevance. But
still red, still MAGA, Florida. Mark Caputo, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you, sir.
so much. For more on the impact of redistricting on these Florida races, I want to bring in CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, your friend in mind, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, break it down.
Hey, how are you? I can't top the stories, Major. Those are great. But I do have a map. And so here's what we got. Your redistricting in Florida should, by the numbers, net Republicans, if the partisanship holds, 3 to 4 seats. And as you guys were just mentioning, what has to happen for those lines to be drawn is that those Republican districts are not quite as Republican as they used to be. So these primaries and picking those candidates do have a lot to do with whether they can make those gains. And what I want to do is show you that in context. The Republicans are really counting on Florida because, in addition to the other places, Texas, everybody will remember, North Carolina, maybe some in Ohio, where they've had a net advantage, at least on the map, in redistricting. This is one reason why they might have a chance to hold on to the House. And yeah, Florida's a big part of that, Major.
There's also a race going on, primary going on in Alaska, and they have a unique primary system. Walk us through it.
Yeah. Here's your battleground map of what we see as the main key Senate races. I've got Alaska on it. Florida is not, as you guys mentioned. What happens in Alaska tonight is the top 4 candidates are going to go through to the November election, and they're from all parties, all running on the same ballot. Now, the reason Democrats think they have a chance to have a Senate pickup in this very reliably red state is that Mary Peltola has won statewide office before, and she is the favored Democratic nominee going into that, or at least to finish in the top 4. If she does, they think they've got a shot, either because of her past history. She ran ahead of Kamala Harris when Kamala Harris lost the state handily back in 24. And then, this is the kicker, Alaska uses a ranked choice voting or an instant runoff. When we get to November, if nobody gets 50%, then the lower candidates' votes go and get allocated to their second choices. There again is a place where the Democrats think they might be able to win. Republicans, on the same angle, want to make sure that their candidates get up there to be at least the second choice for Dan Sullivan as well. That's your Alaska breakdown. We might all be here, sitting here in late November, talking about Alaska. So put it in your mind.
Yes, indeed. Before I let you go, Anthony, polling has had some difficult years recently. I don't need to tell you that. We have justifiable pride in our survey data at CBS News. But in the LA mayor's race, something happened recently where a poll was circulated, then recirculated. It turned out to be utterly fraudulent. Walk us through that.
Okay, big picture, Major. There are a lot of horse race polls out there, some in districts, some in states, some in races like you mentioned. And you get this influx of numbers. Everybody wants those horse race polls. They are not all going to be well done. And what you want to do is, number one, stick with true and tried polling organizations, number one. And number two, everybody just kind of back off on the horse race a little bit. Look for polls that explain the electorate. Look for polls that explain why people do what they do, and that will kind of satisfy the demand out there. There's going to be a lot, I think this cycle especially, there's going to be a lot of real polls out there, that we shouldn't necessarily trust. And unfortunately, that's the state of play right now. People think they can do polls and get attention. Some people are doing polls just to kind of move the polling averages that everybody gets so fixated on. My word, use caution. Don't use so much horse race. Stick to the tried and true.
Stick to the tried and true. Personified at CBS News by Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, we thank you, sir. President Trump took to social media today to say that there are no ongoing or planned talks with Iran to end the war. The president also said, interestingly, the Strait of Hormuz is open and suggested the waterway should be or might already be a U.S. territory. Not surprisingly, Iran's deputy foreign minister called that assertion a delusion. CBS News chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes has the latest. Nancy, pick it up from there.
Well, Major, the president's assertion that the Strait of Hormuz was not echoed by most others in the administration or leaders around the world who are desperately hoping that it actually does get reopened because they would like to see the free flow of oil into and out of the Persian Gulf once again. You know, the president made a big threat against Oman, said that he might bomb Oman. Normally that would be a major cause for concern. Not only in the region, but of course for leaders of Oman itself. But it was kind of met with a big shrug because President Trump has made threats like this before. No one seriously believes that he would bomb a U.S. ally like Oman. And so some mixed messaging from the president there, mixed messaging about the talks. Yesterday, remember, he said there were back-channel discussions going on with the IRGC. The Iranians came out and said, no, there aren't. And then today he says there are absolutely no talks happening. No talks scheduled.
And the senior advisor to the White House, Jared Kushner, president's son-in-law, said that there is something going on that is more robust. I'm trying to figure out what Jared Kushner was telling Fox News that fits at all with what the president said. They seem completely disconnected.
Well, you know, Kushner's words were a little bit difficult to parse as well, Major. It's not surprising that you're confused because on one hand, he said that communications between the U.S. and the Iranians are more robust than ever. Basically, they're talking. They're getting to know each other in a way that they didn't before. But he also went on to say that right now the Iranians are not showing any interest in doing something that makes sense. So in other words, you know, they're having conversations, but the big conversation about nuclear weapons, the main reason that President Trump got into this war in the first place, they're not really talking about that in a substantive way. Excellent. Nancy Cordes, thank you so much for helping it out. I appreciate it. You got it.
I'm joined now by Aaron David Miller, friend of the show, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and most importantly for this conversation, deeply experienced in the region. Aaron David Miller, I don't like to be overtly glib. I often am with this topic, and I wince when I do so. But there's a great shrugocracy now developing around what President Trump says about this conflict and his intentions. The region just doesn't seem to pay as much attention to assertions he makes. The Strait of Hormuz is a U.S. territory. We might bomb Oman. There are no talks. There are talks. Am I reading this somewhat correctly?
I mean, I think things are happening here, Joe. I think you're reading it the way we all are. You have a frustrated, angry president that, in a war of choice, has gotten himself into a fix with no easy way out. I'm old enough to remember Vietnam and what LBJ said in '68. He felt like a hitchhiker in a Texas hailstorm. He couldn't run, he couldn't hide, and he couldn't make it stop. And the reality is, this is not Vietnam. But the box that the president is in is quite clear, and it's sturdy. And the Iranians are quite content right now to keep him there until they are persuaded that he's prepared to come their way, and he's not. So on one hand, massive escalation has proven to be a key to an empty room. Cutting a deal that surrenders sovereignty over the Straits of Hormuz, even limited sovereignty, is a fundamental betrayal of American national interests. So they're picking right now, Scott Bessent talked about it last week, the economic option. They're going to wait. Blockade on, more sanctions. Maybe they'll cut off the Chinese, the Omanis, anyone else who essentially looks to American banks to process oil sales. Maybe they'll cut them off from the American financial system. That would be a severe sanction. And over time, if you want to wait 3, 4, 5 months, maybe the Iranian economy will break. And maybe, just maybe, you could change the calculation on the guys that are running the railroad in Tehran. I don't think so. It's an existential issue for them. It's not one for us. And that means, Major, that they're prepared to take risks and absorb pain that we clearly and simply are not.
And when you outline those potential places of economic leverage, they've been on the table from the beginning. That they have not yet been used perhaps suggests to us the reason why is that the United States might not be able to take the pain. More importantly, our allies might not be willing to take the pain. Whether China is an ally or not, they are an international partner of some note, and that has to be calculated. And my guess is it has been calculated throughout.
I think that's right. And, allies, I mean, we're alone in this. That's the extraordinary thing about this crisis. I cannot remember, having worked for administrations and voted for Republicans and Democrats, Jimmy Carter to Bush 43, a crisis in which arguably 2 countries, Iran and the US, you can toss the Israelis in, 3 countries have held the international global oil economy hostage, and the international economy as well. We don't have allies in this. We're the Chinese. They're quite content to see us marinate in our own incompetence and the lack of a strategy. The Russians, every time oil goes up, what's the 90s now, and it could go up higher. The Putin's budget gap for financing the war is a bit smaller, and the Europeans, simply the French, the Germans, the Brits, they don't seem to count. So that makes us even worse. We don't have a lot of folks and allies pulling for us, helping us, and trying to figure out a way to press the Iranians, basically, to find a way out.
A 3-nation stalemate. That's what it appears to be. Aaron David Miller, appreciate it very much. Thank you for your time. Still to come,
Thank you,
OpenAI launches ChatGPT for teens with an array of what it describes as safety features to minimize exposure to, among other things, self-harm, eating disorders, violence, and human-like relationships. Also, the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. Now, she has confessed to killing her 3 young children, but has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. What we heard from her ex-mother-in-law in her testimony today. Plus, ABC sues the FCC, saying its First Amendment rights are being violated due to a, quote, retaliatory campaign by the Trump administration. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. Yet another artificial intelligence frontier opens. OpenAI has launched its new ChatGPT for teens. The company says this new model is meant for kids between the ages of 13 and 17 and provides stronger protections and increased learning features to help students with their schoolwork. Axios chief technology correspondent Ina Fried joins me now. She is also the author of the daily Axios AI Plus newsletter. We'll get to the learning component of this in a second, Ina, but I read your piece, and there are all these protections in there to help teens avoid chatbot conversations about self-harm, eating disorders, violence, dangerous activities, sexually explicit or graphic content. There's a lot out there that OpenAI needs to protect kids from, which also sort of begs the question, is this a safe space if AI goes rogue, as we've read other stories about its roguish tendencies?
I think that is one of the questions that I think mostly parents are going to have to decide is, are these additional safeguards sufficient to me? And look, I have a young teen. It's something I think about. And then there's the counterpoint, which is kids are probably going to use AI at some point. So is it better to have something that has added protections and really start to have that use and start to have that conversation about how to use AI effectively? And I think there are people on both sides. Some people say teens just shouldn't be using these at all. A lot of people say, well, teens are going to use them anyway, so let's build a safer experience.
And anyone who has raised children, has teens, knows that there is a lot of emotions about the teenage years. It just comes with the territory. And there's emotional dependence issues and human-like relationships and sort of being answered back in a very complimentary or endearing way that chatbots sort of default to. That's also a concern, is it not?
It's a big one. And there was a study last year that showed that already lots of teens have some sort of AI companion. And that's one of the areas that the teen mode tries to deal with. It tries to be stricter about not giving ChatGPT a personality, not letting it pretend to emotions, not letting it pretend to be a friend. I still think it's a huge risk. I do think, you know, teens are looking for relationships, they're looking for affirmation. And look, chatbots are endlessly patient. They don't bully. So I think there are a lot of things fundamentally that push towards having a relationship that can become unhealthy. I think they've done some smart things here, but I still will be interested to see how over time those protections hold up. Do those relationships form despite the safeguards?
And everyone that is in the teaching profession, whether you're in university or collegiate academics, you're worried about AI models basically doing all the work for the students, skipping over all of the fundamentals of pursuing knowledge, processing knowledge, and then repeating knowledge in your own words. On the schoolwork side, what does ChatGPT do to try to improve the learning experience?
So a lot of what it's doing here is building on a study mode they had and really trying to redirect those academic educational questions instead of just answering, kind of saying, seems like you're trying to learn this. Here's how to understand this concept. It can create quizzes, it can sort of help to be a better learning partner. And I think this really gets at the fundamental tension that you're talking about, which is there are a lot of people who believe AI can be great for education. I'm one of those. I think if you had a full education system where an AI was watching, where is the student learning? Where are they getting stuck? That would be great. That's not how AI has come into our educational system. It's come into our existing system and is mostly doing the homework for people. It's answering questions. So they've taken some steps to try and redirect those. But I suspect that teens who really want to use ChatGPT for answers will either be able to do it in the teen version or again. I think one of the problems is if teens don't get what they want out of this product, they'll probably find something else that works for them better.
In about 25 seconds, I can hear parents saying to themselves right now, oh, great, another thing I have to worry about.
Yeah, I think this is something that parents really needed to be worried about already. And this is one possible answer. Again, I don't think it's a cure all, but I think we are better off having this product in the world than not because teens are already using AI.
Ina Fried, Axios, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, a dramatic development in the saga, I think that's what we can call it, surrounding the ownership of the Los Angeles Lakers. More when we come back. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here is a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. Family drama within the Buss family brewing over the sale of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, that's something we've seen before. Last week, Bob Iger and Joshua Kushner bought a majority stake in the team for more than $12 billion, doing so from businessman Mark Walter. Yesterday, it was reported that the Buss siblings agreed to sell their stake to Iger and Kushner as well. But Jeannie Buss, the current governor of the Lakers, opposed that decision and wants to retain a role in the franchise that the Buss family has owned for 46 years. The Busses own about 18% of the team. Jeannie Buss's attorney said she, per a 2017 court order, is the controlling shareholder of that stake in the team. Mark Walter, for his part, has owned the Lakers for just 10 months. He's owned the Los Angeles Dodgers since 2012, and he is reportedly also in talks to sell his stake in the Chelsea Soccer Club. It's not unclear exactly where those talks stand, but it comes as Walter faces a federal investigation into fraud. The Wall Street Journal reports Walter's businesses did not properly report $20 billion in loans. Walter and his businesses have not been accused of any crimes. It is quite a story in LA. Department of Homeland Security officials tell CBS News the Trump administration has quietly been deporting Mexican migrants to other countries in Central America. This despite the Mexican government's willingness to accept their return. The exclusive reporting by our Camilo Montoya Galvez finds an unknown number of migrants are being sent to Honduras and Guatemala in order to deter immigration through the U.S.-Mexico border. Mexico's foreign ministry voiced opposition to this policy in a statement to CBS News, saying it accepts the return of all of its people. The defense in the Lindsay Clancy murder trial called multiple witnesses today, including her ex-mother-in-law, Susan Clancy. Lindsay Clancy has admitted to killing her 3 young children in January of 2023. She has pleaded not guilty to murder charges, arguing she had postpartum psychosis, bipolar disorder, and was over-medicated. Here is some of her ex-mother-in-law's testimony.
She was very nurturing, very loving. She was a wonderful mother, wonderful.
Did you find at all, or do you have an opinion with your observations of Lindsay as to whether or not she was offered help and would just spurn it and not see doctors and not have
She was
treatment?
begging for help.
Begging for help. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins me now. So Jessica, as you know, and we've discussed, the courtroom is about the facts and the law. But trials sometimes carry on larger conversations in America, and there's sort of a multi-layered conversation going on about this trial. One that talks about postpartum psychosis and its reality. A conversation about the mental health care system and can differing doctors miss certain things or overlook certain things. And in the process of trying to treat someone, can you over-medicate someone to the danger of them or possibly their loved ones? A lot is going on here. Your thoughts?
Exactly as you said, that this case is taking on more than just the tragedy at hand. We are having a conversation about mental health issues that people can experience after having children, postpartum psychosis. We are having conversations about the mental health system. And frankly, I think the defense is putting the mental health system a bit on trial in the sense that they're saying that what Clancy received was this fragmented treatment that did not truly treat her and that did not truly understand the depth of her pain and the depth of her illness. And what they're seeing is that she saw a couple of people over Zoom, even one mental health professional, the psychiatrist, the day before this tragedy occurred. And what the defense is arguing is basically everybody missed it. And I think what they're saying underneath is that she is not the only one, that this could happen to somebody else as well.
Of course, the state is saying, yes, that might all be true, but that's not nearly enough. And under the law, there's a serious crime here, and it must be prosecuted to the fullest.
Well, that's right, because we know that saying I am suffering from a mental illness, even if it is a very serious one, is not enough to release somebody of criminal liability. When it comes to this particular case, what the prosecution needs to show is that she was able to form the intent necessary to commit these crimes. Specifically, when it comes to this defense of, we commonly think of it as not guilty by reason of insanity. But what is happening in Massachusetts is that the defense wants to show that she was not able to form the intent necessary because she was suffering from a mental illness that caused her to be unable to conform her behavior within the bounds of the law or to understand the wrongness or criminality of her actions. Those, Major, as you know, are very high bars. It's much more than I'm severely depressed or I have bipolar disorder or even I have borderline personality disorder. If we had a system in our country where saying I'm suffering from a mental illness, therefore I cannot be guilty of a crime, obviously that would look like a hugely different criminal justice system.
About 25 seconds, Jessica. There have been some comparisons online to a 2001 case involving Andrea Yates. Legitimate?
Well, in terms of the broad brush of the tragedy that happened in both cases and the fact that the mothers who killed their children were saying, I'm suffering from mental illnesses, fair. Are there, as you know, significant factual differences between the two cases? Absolutely. Is that enough to make a legal difference? We have to wait to see.
We have to wait and see. Jessica Levinson, always a pleasure. Thank you so very, very much. The FCC has long threatened Disney through the means of reviewing broadcast licenses. Now, the media giant is suing. We'll bring you the latest on this legal battle. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. The Walt Disney Company, ABC, and their own television stations sued the Federal Communications Commission today. The lawsuit follows the agency's decision to review ABC's broadcast licenses early. I mean, way early, as history will note. ABC wrote as part of its 45-page complaint, quote, acting through the Federal Communications Commission, the administration has waged a retaliatory campaign against ABC for a single reason. It disapproves of what ABC broadcasts, end quote. David Shepardson joins me now. He's a D.C.-based correspondent for Reuters. David, I'm very glad to have you here. There's a time element here. Walt Disney and ABC want a temporary restraining order because they fear the FCC is going to act in the very near future. Walk my audience through that.
So as you pointed out, this really unprecedented action to bring these licenses up for early renewal in April, that comment period expired about a week ago. So at any time, the FCC could begin the process to revoke those licenses by doing something called a hearing designation order. Disney and ABC tried to jump ahead of that process by going to court today, asking a judge to block this process from going forward. Those licenses don't begin to come up for renewal until October 2028. The judge told Disney and the FCC, give me some dates for a hearing in a couple days. The FCC chair, Brendan Carr, told me earlier today that his decision wasn't imminent, it wasn't coming today, and he hasn't even decided when to decide, suggesting there is some time. But it's clear that this judge is going to have to make a decision about whether to block the process or let the FCC review go on.
This early review has not happened in 50 years. The FCC says it's about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that it wants to investigate whether they were discriminatory or not. As I understand it, Walt Disney and ABC, that's a smokescreen. This is straight up First Amendment hassling of a company because of what it broadcasts and how it goes about its day-to-day business.
That's right. They point to their argument is that the day after this Jimmy Kimmel joke in April angered the president and the first lady that many thought was in bad taste. The day after that was when the FCC chair teed up this process for the early renewal. And they point to President Trump's years of threats and urging of the FCC to withdraw their licenses, most recently a few weeks ago when ABC opted not to air his remarks on election security in prime time on the broadcast network. They think they did on their live stream. But that's going to be a really difficult question, I think, for the FCC to answer. How do you show that the pressure from the White House and the president is now animating this review? The FCC chair says this is about the public interest standard. All the broadcast networks operate on the public airwaves. They're worth billions of dollars. And so as a result, they're not a cable channel. They're not a newspaper. They have to operate in the public interest.
What difference would it make, David, so my audience can understand, if this license review process actually went through as Walt Disney and ABC fears? What would they lose in the process?
It takes a long time. And as you pointed out at the top, this hasn't happened in 50 years. So some of the process is really uncertain. There's not an administrative law judge in place. Would the whole commission take this matter up? Would there be a mini trial? When would it go to court? Certainly, for an extended period of time, Disney's not going to lose those licenses, regardless of what the FCC does in these key markets like Chicago and New York. But I think part of what Disney and ABC are saying is just the threat is already changing their behavior. And the example they give is The View. There's a separate proceeding about whether the View is exempt from the equal time mandates, meaning they can have any candidate they want on at any time. They don't have to offer equal time to another candidate because they're considered a bona fide news program. Well, the FCC has moved to strike that determination. And as a result, ABC says since February, when that process began, they have not had another candidate on. And they say because of fear that any other appearance could be used against them in this license revocation proceeding, assuming it goes forward. So that's really what it's about. Yeah. Is it changing their behavior? And also, every journalist could be worried, am I putting my station's licenses at risk?
David, there's other media news a bit closer to home. Paramount filed a court motion today seeking that the 12 states suing to delay its merger with Warner Brothers Discovery to post $1.9 billion bond to cover fees and financing costs caused by the delay of this merger. Full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm going to say. Paramount Skydance, Paramount parent company of CBS News. What do you make of all this, David?
It's a really interesting question, right? So Paramount wants an earlier trial. The judge set the trial for March of 2027. Then there's a round of briefs due. So it's $7 million a day that Paramount owes in these ticking fees if the deal doesn't close by September 30th, plus an estimated $200 million in higher financing charges. So I do think it's part of a effort by Paramount to try to pressure the states to at least be open to a settlement. There's been some reports that maybe Paramount could move its corporate headquarters. There could be other impacts in California. So I think there's a lot of, behind the scenes efforts. Can there be a deal short of a trial? Because as you say, that's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to push any closure well into the middle of next year. At the same time, like 68 countries have approved the deal or have not objected, where it's not, the question is, what would the California Attorney General and other states suing really want as part of a settlement?
David Shepperson, I appreciate it very much. Thank you. A new ad from Michigan Democratic Senate nominee Abdul El-Sayed features praise from Fox News in primetime. Next, our political panel tackles that and a lot more. Oh, it's my favorite time of the show, political panel time. Let me introduce you, Jaime Moore, Democratic strategist, former director of DNC Chair Jamie Harrison's office, and Erin McGuire, Republican strategist, yes, but most importantly, making her first appearance as a CBS News political contributor. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited.
So I pitched this before we went to break. So the iron rule here is if I pitch it at break, we start with it here. Abdul El-Sayed has a new ad. Here's the stinger of it at the end. It's 60 seconds. Here's the end of it. Watch.
The party bosses, the special interests, spent $70 million to stop him, but nothing stops a kid from Michigan.
I'm Abdul El-Sayed, son of Michigan, and I approve this message.
You gotta respect Abdul because he beat the machine.
Jesse Waters with Abdul El-Sayed. Mad respect. Game honors game. Jaime?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's election season in America, so there's a lot happening right now. But it's been clear over the past few months that he's a political athlete. He's having fun with it. This ad is another way for him to introduce himself to the electorate beyond just being...
he needs crossover support in Michigan.
Well, yeah, he does.
And if he puts Jesse Waters there and is unafraid to do that, even if it's going to aggravate some Democrats...
It's going to help him out a little bit.
Right?
I don't know that it will help him out. I don't think that he's getting crossover voters that are Republicans or former Trump voters that are coming into the.
I said he needed to try to find them.
Yeah, I don't think Jesse Waters is his winning message either. It's his blue collar roots that's going to be his winning message. But really, he's got to bring in disaffected black voters, where he is vastly underperforming in Michigan with them as a core Democratic base. Before he even expands to swing voters and the opportunity there, he's got to shore up at home, and that's going to be a big issue for him, where Mike Rogers is running formidably, and that state is now leaning to the right more than people much more expected when this race started.
There's been some immediate polling after the primary. We'll have to let it set in. But right now, Mike Rogers appears to have the inside lane.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's right. I think what he's got to do right now, and what we've seen him do over the last week, is reach out to black voters, reach out to the electorate. There were half of the voters on the Dem side who did not vote for him, and he's trying to make sure people know two things. One, he's more than just a progressive candidate, and two, he is a son of Michigan. I think there are questions about his identity that he wants to be able to answer through these sort of ads, and that's what he's trying to do right now as well.
So Jon Ossoff, the Democratic senator from Georgia, running for re-election. The Trump White House has been going back and forth for 40-some hours. Everyone can follow that online about what it is. It isn't. Here's Jon Ossoff today talking about the president and this corruption message the Democrats will be using in the midterm quite prominently. Listen.
I don't think anything illustrates the times more aptly than that the draft-dodging crook president who has plunged our nation recklessly into a war he knows not how to end or to win.
Aaron?
I got to tell you, Jon Ossoff, for being as good of a campaigner and a formidable candidate as he is, has really set himself up for a bad 48 hours here. And you can go back to that speech, but even in those remarks today, he was talking about how the message is do we want a white nationalist in the United States Senate? I think that's a bridge too far here. And we're starting to see this narrative shape.
Meaning his Republican challenger.
Yeah, meaning his Republican challenger. I think that's language that's continuing to show Ossoff is getting a bit more over his skis and out of his depth when it comes to the conversation. I think the Natalie Harp comments themselves were too aggressive.
And now I think the Trump White House off.
I certainly did, and it would have set me off too, but it's spiraling right now. And you're seeing this larger messaging right now of crooks versus commies. That's really how they want to try to nationalize the race. Everybody running needs to run for their district at home.
Yeah. There are plenty of Democrats who tell me you simply cannot be too aggressive in these times.
I mean, look, I worked for Jon Ossoff in 2017 when he ran for Congress. I was in Atlanta last week. And so he is resonating. And people in Georgia do see him as the clear senator from Georgia. But what he's trying to do right now is he's trying to have everyone talk about him. He's very confident in his message. He's very confident in his election there in Georgia. And so he's
intentionally provocative.
Yeah, absolutely. And he would like for people to have this conversation about him because he feels that he can have something to say in 2028 and beyond. And so I think the fact that we're having this conversation right now is a win for him.
Aaron, we have some experience with a Republican who is intentionally provocative. The president of the United States.
Yes, it worked for him. But for Ossoff, he tries to give a mentality that is not who he is. He is not this bombastic. He is a statesman. He is a call to a new generation of leader. And if I was the Republican running in Georgia right now, and you're seeing this new turn in tone from Ossoff, this is where you can start to show him to people to move a persuadable voter.
Perceive there might be an opening.
Yes, I see that now that his language is changing and he's becoming more inflammatory, now you can build the narrative that he's not what he seems.
And I think what Jon is saying, what his team is saying, is he's meeting the moment. And I think he's showing people that he's more than just this moderate that they've seen from Georgia. He can be a fighter, and he can be someone that can stand up to Donald Trump in this moment that Democrats want to have a fighter. But I think you'll see him as he wins this election in November. He's going to probably pivot again and go back a little bit more broad in this messaging.
There's always a pivot in politics. There's never not a pivot. Hiva Moore, Aaron McGuire, again, welcome. Great to have you here. Thank you. Quick reminder, The Takeout is available as a podcast on, among other places, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else you find your podcast. You can find each show there and our long-form interviews, of which we do many. Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Quick reminder, we are relentlessly curious, reliably civil, and occasionally clever. The Daily Report is coming your way